Hey guys, it's your favorite sisters with the Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver podcast. On the show, you'll hear caregivers confessing the good, the bad, and the completely unexpected. You're guaranteed to relate, be inspired, leave with helpful tips and resources, and of course, laugh. Now, let's get to today's confession. Hey, Jay.
Hey, Natalie.
How are you doing this morning?
I was doing pretty good until you started making fun of my hair.
Oh my gosh. Everyone should now watch on YouTube because JJ's hair, well, it's hair.
I just want to make one disclaimer. I made a big mistake and I had my bangs cut after like 30 years. Bad idea. That's it. That's all my thing.
Bangs.
Don't do it, folks.
Don't do it. Bangs.
Caregiver. That's a tipsy advice.
Tipsy for today. Be careful with bangs.
So let's get focused. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So, because sometimes they're your friends, but sometimes they're not. But you know, Jay, we're not here to talk about your bangs. That's right now. Hey, we have a pretty awesome guest today.
I know somebody showed up. I'm so excited.
I know. I do love it when they show up. Okay. So, Jay, really focus right now. So let's talk. Will you talk about Susanne? Because she's pretty awesome. And I really want our listeners to be able to learn a little bit more about her before we get to her confession.
That is right. But I don't think she goes by Susanne. She actually just simply, we're going to call her Caregiver Warrior, because that is what all of her social media, her books, her website, like that's what she is. She's a caregiver warrior. And I've already met her this morning. I totally go along with that. So let me tell you about, she actually is Susanne White, and she is the founder of Caregiver Warrior. She cared for her parents, a mother with dementia and a father who opted for open heart surgery at 87. So he lived as long as possible to care for his wife, Suzanne's mom. I love that. In the 4 years, she says, during that care, she was able to heal her relationships with both of them and was honored to help walk them home. I am so excited to have you here.
Oh my God.
Suzanne. We are excited to have you maybe help us be warriors, because we struggle sometimes. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. We all struggle.
I know.
That's why we're warriors.
That's exactly right.
We are definitely on the struggle bus. So, you know, Susanne, I know, gosh, you've got a long history of caregiving, even before, I think, your parents. You know, I typically love to say, okay, let's just jump right in and start from the beginning. But really the beginning is you were born and then kind of move up to where you got thrown into caregiving. I think your first bout of caregiving.
Well, my actual first bout of caregiving was my parents, although I was the caregiver in the family. You know, I was that child. And a lot of my whole thing is about who we are as people and how we respond to the caregiving role from our history. But the first big call was my mom and dad. My caregiving journey started with a phone call from my sister, because she was in Florida, I was in New York, they were in Jersey, and we all flew down for the holidays. And they had to take my dad off an airplane. He was so exhausted from caring from my mom. You know? And they were hiding it from her. They were a team. He was a World War II vet, bombardier hero pilot. You know, the second time they took him off the plane. First time he landed it after they would try to shoot him down. But they were working together as a team to sort of hide from us that my mom was like in early stages of dementia.
Wow. How old were they, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't. I have to go back in my mind a little. Like in their mid 80s.
That's wow. So in their mid 80s, living their best life in Jersey. They are, and I mean, that makes sense. I mean, your dad was in the military. I mean, if you think about that era of individuals back then, they were resilient. Like right now, we're a little weak. I mean, if you think about it.
No, absolutely. Because they're all gone now. So many of them are gone or walking home now. You know, I mean, they're a completely different generation in a lot of different ways, the way they handled things and passed things down on to us, you know?
So are you the oldest between you and your sister?
The oldest.
Yes.
JJ. I knew JJ was going to be excited about that. I'm not going to lie to you.
I'm the big sis. Until I was 14, I was an only child.
Oh.
My sister was a surprise baby. My mom, now this is back in, let's say a couple decades ago. I won't
Don't give your age away.
No, thank you. A couple decades ago, she at 42, she got pregnant.
Wow.
Yeah, they thought she was in menopause, So anyway, yeah.
Oh, God help me, JJ. That's my
Be
answer.
careful, girl.
Oh my God. I mean,
Be careful.
I know, because I didn't even think about that. I feel like, okay, guys, I'm going through menopause. We'll have a
Irish
different
Catholics.
podcast called something different.
Yeah.
And so
Irish Catholics, so anyway.
you can get pregnant if you
So she
are
got pregnant. I remember them both walking in. Like, my mom was like, and my dad was like,
What?
and I said, we're pregnant. So yeah, so the little bundle of joy, my sister Michelle was born 14 years when I was 14.
So you've been living life, you and your sister doing normal family stuff. And so so you really didn't hit caregiving until then later in life. How about, give or take, how old? 40s, 50s, not, I'll say that
I was not my youngest self. And I was
Okay.
kind of and thank God, I think now I look back, I was kind of in my, prime. I was
Yes.
working full time. I was I was in New York running around. And I ended up being working full time caregiver for both of them. Yeah. So I was just and look, and here's the thing I think that a lot of caregivers we do. I mean, we not that we're in denial, but we sort of, they're, oh yeah, my parents are getting older.
Right.
They have basic stuff going on. And, we're okay. And it's not that you're not thinking about it, but it's, to get that phone call or to get that, to be hit with that realization. And then, there wasn't there's no question. Like, I think caregivers are born caregivers.
Yeah.
I think we're like hardwires, the one of us who do it. And, it's like, you don't think about it. There's no like to do, like, a pro and con list of, well, I won't caregiver. I will, it's just like, okay, you need me? What do you need?
Yeah.
And therein, I think, lies a lot of stuff that we can talk about.
Yeah.
Of course, we're going to do it. Of course, we're going to be committed. Of course, we're going to try to do it perfectly, because that's what we do as caregiver warriors. We just do it.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting, though? See, I totally interrupted, Jay. Sorry about that. You just said, of course. But here, I'm going to hold my thought because I can actually remember it for a second. Jay, go.
I do have a short question, Natalie. So
That's okay.
just out of, when the episode happened, like when you really jumped into it, proximity wise, how close were you to your parents and your sister? Like, are you guys close to them? Are you living close to them?
Geographically, right? So they were in South Jersey, which was about, 90-minute drive,
Okay.
90-mile drive. That was about an hour and a half from New York.
Okay. All right. And your sister as well?
And my sister was in Florida. So so big
Far.
sister and closer to them. That was it.
Okay.
I'm it.
Okay.
I like how you said, of course we're going to do this. And of course we're going to do that. And I think some of our listeners would be like, There's a lot of people that are not, of course. They look at it and it's like this finger. Like they're like, are you going to do that? Or I can't do that. Or I won't do that. Or like for you guys, it sounds like it was, of course. Was it, of course, for your sister too, if you don't mind me asking?
And I don't mind. And she was great about the whole thing. Yes. And when I say that, like, that's what I'm saying. I think like like caregivers, like those of us who sign up like that, we're born that. And yes, there are people for a lot of extremely appropriate reasons and inappropriate reasons that can't show up.
Right.
Or won't show up.
Yeah.
Or really struggle to show up. And I wasn't one of them. I'm one of, the army that's like, yeah, there's no question. There's no cons to this. And I don't have a choice really, because that's my personality.
Yeah.
That's true. I like that. No, I agree with that. So this got us. We got caught with our parents, but that's because our parents kind of pushed us, kept us at an arm's length distance when it came to planning. Our parents, we've talked about this before, they did not plan for caregiving, even though our mom was diagnosed with Parkinson's. And my mom for many years tried to hide it as much as possible. And that's not a bad thing, but she didn't want that. She didn't want, if you think about it, when you're known and you have an identity and you're known for certain things, and then all of a sudden you get sick, all people think of you as is the illness. They don't see you anymore. They see, oh, there's a Parkinson's, or my husband has, oh, he had cancer. Like that doesn't define us. So when you guys were, as your parents were aging and you and your sister, you're engaging, did you all sit down as a family and have discussions around we're getting older. Here's our will. Here's our POA. Here's our medical. This is what we want. We're all on the same page.
So just to answer the question, I'm going to give you the dynamic.
Okay.
All right. So my mom was like 4'11", like this little Irish
She's
Catholic
vertically
dynamo.
challenged. Okay.
It was like she was a powerhouse, and we didn't get along. So she was very controlling, and now looking back, I see how well she managed it all. Mm-hmm. She took care of the wills. She took care of the finances. She took care of the health insurance, set them up actually really well. So I had to stay at arm's length. However, I am her. I have had to admit that I'm like, I've taken, yeah, okay. And so I started getting a little nervous. So I did step in at one point and got powers of attorney. I became the power of attorney for them. And that was extremely anxiety producing for me, but I did get them to do it with my dad's help. But that was the piece that was missing, that she hadn't done, because she didn't want to relinquish control to anybody.
Control is such a big thing if you really think about it, because I think a POA is your first, there are all these little trigger things that make you think of death and dying. Like, I'm giving up my independence. And so if I do a POA, I'm giving up a piece of myself. I just basically let JJ control everything I do.
That's true. And, for me, I guess I think about POAs, and for anybody listening, it isn't. My husband, we have POAs now, when we travel. It's not truly that. They can be limited. So.
Yes. And I want to add something to this, because I think it's really an important piece. So I had financial power of attorney.
Yeah.
I didn't have healthcare power of attorney.
Medical. You didn't have medical.
Oh. I did not have medical. Okay. And I learned a very important lesson, which I talk about.
Okay.
So when my mom and dad died within 7 weeks of each other, which was a little intense. So my mom passed out at the luncheon for my dad. I didn't want to go anywhere. Anyway, to make a long story short, we had to call 911 to have her taken to the hospital the next day. And I had a snarky EMS guy, and my mom appeared lucid, and he said, where's your medical power of attorney? I said, oh, here it is. He says, that's not it. I said, what are you talking about? And he says, she's telling me she's fine. I'm not taking her. So thank God the universe helped me out, and between her best friend and us cajoling her, we got her to say, hey, we're just going to check you out. I'll bring you home this afternoon. Fine. And the other EMS, the female EMS paramedic, said, you know what? That's it. I got a yes from her. I'm taking her. But that could have been really bad, like really bad, because my mom died 7 weeks later.
Wow.
And we found out she had, stuff going on internally. So note to self, of all the stuff you need to get together, and if you think you got it covered, talk to other people, talk to other professionals, get other opinions, cover your stuff. Yeah. And if you think you're covered, assume you're not, and go talk to somebody else, another professional, and make sure it's all lined up.
That's where I think an elder care attorney really helps with doing this, because there's an attorney who does your will, but there are elder care attorneys that help you and remind you or tell you about the things that you don't know to ask. Like, you don't know what you don't know. And so I think that's really important, to be able to have access and do that ahead or in advance of doing that. Oh, that's interesting.
And there are, and there's, and if sometimes we can't afford elder attorneys, and they're the best. So, there's free resources, like
free resource.
There's free resources, the Department of Aging, your local community, your state, your city, the library. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. This is not my wheelhouse, but really, other than the mistakes I made.
Oh, yeah.
We're really expert at mistakes.
That's exactly right.
I think we all can say that. Like, I wish I'd done something different on that day.
Oh my God.
I think another resource I'm going to throw in here is your local area on aging. local agency on aging. They're typically called AAAs. And so they're in various parts, they're in all states, but these folks really help. Sometimes, so here's a little tipsy. Sometimes AAA's, Area Agency on Aging, they go by different names but it is aging. And so I think when you are looking and doing some research, they are a fantastic resource. And then, of course, you can look up and use some of our favorites are findhelp.org. And you could look on 211. I'm a big fan of findhelp.org. So there's your tipsy. There's one of your tipsies. Hey, Jay, I need to take a break for just a second. We'll be right back. I don't know about you, but my inbox is always cluttered with useless emails. But there's one I always open, the Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver newsletter. You may say, Natalie, what makes yours so special? Well, I'm biased, but don't just take my word for it. Here's what our subscribers say they love. First, it comes once per month, and you can read it in under 5 minutes. Next, you'll find amazing tips and resources to use in your everyday life. And who doesn't love a recommendation? These sisters do, which is why we share sister-approved products and discount links to save you time and money. And of course, you're first to know about the upcoming month's confessions. Just like our show, you're guaranteed to relate, be inspired, leave with helpful tips and resources, and of course, laugh. Go to our website, confessionsofareluctantcaregiver.com, to sign up for our newsletter today.
We're back. So
I love that. Let's keep going. Okay.
Interrupting cat. We were so excited to be back. So Susanne, we talk about things that you wish you had known. I mean, are there we talk about all the resources, like other resources things that you wish you had known at that time, because you said your dad passed away prior. He passed away 7 weeks prior. Like, what else were things that you found out during that time that you wish you had known?
For me personally, a lot of it was my reaction to the entire situation.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's which is kind of my wheelhouse, is the emotional state that we're in. And being a type A perfectionist, I came at it pretty heavy. I was a kind of a helicopter caregiver. And if people that don't understand that, you're sort of hovering around all the time, and not giving people time to adapt and yourself to adapt. I had to be a control freak and perfectionist around everything. And I still am. I work on it all the time. So I think the things that were powerfully hit me so powerfully was who I was going into it as a caregiver warrior, and how my expectations of myself hurt me as a caregiver. Because my new topic I'm working on right now is shame. But it's the power of the intensity and the overwhelming circumstance you're in brings out who you are, right? And I had to work on me. So I think I went into it thinking I was going to do it alone. I was going to do it perfectly, and I was going to do it immediately.
I guess that when you said shame, I guess that for me is my big question, knowing what you do. Same thing for me. I started out and thought this is going to be great and I'll do it better, going home and thinking it's going to be a great day and I'm going to take mom out to eat. And then she doesn't want to go out. And I think I'm going to be the best. I look at my life now and I think a lot of mine, even now, there's a lot of grieving involved in it as well. Do you think when it started, do you feel like people grieve and they don't know? The person hasn't passed away. I mean, is that something that you see, that you feel like people are encountering?
Absolutely. Pre-grief. It's pre-grief. I think pre-grief and fear is, I think there's a river of fear that you're constant, because you know where you're going. You're walking someone home a lot of the times, right? Eventually, you're walking them home. And I think there's fear that we carry with us underneath everything. And then I think we grieve so many things. I think we grieve our old normal, like our old life, which we're allowed to grieve. I think we're grieving the people that, and you were saying it earlier, that the people that are all of a sudden kind of going through their lives, and all of a sudden or not all of a sudden, but or slowly, they're losing who they used to be or want to be.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's grief about that. And I think there's grief about losing your handle on life in general. I finally began to realize like it's not, I don't have to accept my circumstances. I
Mm-hmm.
have to accept my reaction to my circumstances, right? Like all this stuff that came up for me that oh, I'm not allowed. I shouldn't be feeling like compounding my emotions. Like I was afraid to be afraid. I was angry that I was angry.
Mm.
I'm angry at myself that I was angry, right? I was guilty that I felt guilty, you know? So I think that's this is big soup of grief.
I think that's a good way to put it. A big soup of grief. And you're right. You're right about the angry. Like, why do I feel angry? Why am I felt that way with Jason, like, and he has it harder than me, but I'm also going through all these thoughts and feelings and I feel guilty because I should be grateful and I hadn't even thought about this. I should be grateful to have the opportunity to help him, or I should be grateful I'm not sick. I should be grateful, and I'm not grateful. I'm pissed. I am frustrated. I am tired. I am not doing great. I am failing in many areas. And I'm also a perfectionist. I'm a recovering perfectionist because and I'm not recovering well. I'm trying not to be a perfectionist in every aspect of my life. And so the first step is to acknowledge it. Like, I am a perfectionist. I will not do this well. And, I think that's important, Susanne. I don't know about you, but when you acknowledge this is messy and I
Yeah.
can live in the messiness.
Yes. And I think that's one of my main things that I love to concentrate on is acknowledgement. Because
Mm-hmm.
just back to the anger thing, anger's it's a normal reaction to something. It's an emotion that every single person has in life, and especially in caregiving. There's a rage around what's happening. This is not pretty. It's not fun. It's painful, and there's anger around it, and we all feel it. And to beat ourselves up about it,
Yeah.
it festers. It's not good. And we have to acknowledge, like like I had to really, I have this thing it's called HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired,
Mm-hmm.
like take your emotional temperature. And if I'm like, what's my body like? If I'm angry and tense, I'm not a fun caregiver.
No, no. And it's just making the experience worse. Let me ask you this. I asked another guest if they felt like, did you find a silver lining? And they were like, there's been no silver lining. And I'm like, okay. And you know what? That's that reality for that person. For me, I had to, if I didn't intentionally like actively seek opportunities to find some positive element of this. Like, well, I never thought I'd live in New York for a period of time. Okay. You know what I mean? When you talk about self-care, because I know you've got your book, and are you advising to seek out that as part of self-care?
I'm advising us to do whatever we have to do and whatever works for us
Mm-hmm.
to feel like we deserve to feel okay.
Mm.
Right? Because and I understand how difficult it is to find a silver lining. And I think a lot of times when people say, oh, do self care. And, I think you want to smack them kind of because
Oh, yeah.
it's right, because it's really difficult. So my take basically is I have to feel like I deserve it. That's the first thing.
Mm.
That part of this plan, and I do believe it's a plan. I don't always, I have faith. I lose hope sometimes, but I always have faith. I do believe there's a plan, and I think the plan is that it's self-reflection and to understand what's going on for us. And for me, I the silver lining for me was I healed my relationship with my mom, but I saw that happening
Mm-hmm.
as it happened. but it was because I've changed. That was the silver lining for me, because I was doing things and acting ways and had old history and old behavior that wasn't serving me, not only in caregiving, but in general. And because of the intensity of my caregiving journey, because I had to try to get along with my mom, I had to understand her, I had to understand him, I had to understand me, because I was freaking out in the beginning. I mean, I was miserable. And I know, because that's who I was personally, and we're all different. I knew that had to change. They weren't going to change. I had to. So for me, I had to change how I was looking at it. And believe me, 97% of the time, it was a nightmare. It's messy and it's hard and it's frightening and it's frustrating. But the other 3%, it was like, wow, I just saw myself do something that I've done all my life. And I finally saw that didn't work. Let's try a softer tone here. I learned so much and I was able to see it work. Now that's who I am. Obviously, there's other people who have other things, but I deserve to see its silver lining.
Yeah.
So I have I need advice. So that word, I think, deserve, is hard. And that's just not about caregiving. That is in so many ways for a lot of people, Susanne. Is there a tip or is there something that you see that would help people that say, do I really deserve this? I'm in this terrible situation. How can I say to myself, I do deserve happiness, or I do deserve to accept that it's okay to be angry? Or as Natalie would say, it's okay to be pissed off about this. I deserve to have that feeling. How do you get to that deserve okay?
And this is probably the most loaded question I've ever been asked, because it's a really big conversation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because right? Because it's not, I mean, it's not like, you plug it in and recharge your cell phone. It's like not a boom. It takes work.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work just in general to understand, especially if we come from family history where we weren't taught that. Do you know what I mean? And my mom, when I tell you my mother and I did not get along, I'm telling you, we are so much, and I used to think we were so different. Exactly the same. So we banged heads all my life, and she had great expectations because she had probably an anxiety situation that she didn't have diagnosed, whatever. So I had to really learn that I deserved that the criticism, and that she was so tough on me because she was afraid for me. Took a lot of self-reflection, which we don't necessarily have time to do when we're caregiving, okay? But I urge everyone to do whatever they do for them, to understand that we have something divine inside that deserves, like, whatever you believe in, I personally believe there's something divine inside. And if I could ever get to that, whether meditation or spinning or whatever you do to have that moment of feeling like, wow, that 2-second minute, believe that can exist for you. And that's what we try, that it's not about me. It's about a higher thing, that we have to realize that we're not here to suffer, I don't believe, and that we deserve to be treated really nicely. And I would never say the things to someone else that I'm saying in my head. That's probably the first thing. Listen to what you're saying to yourself about you and about your caregiving, the second guessing, the criticism, the, beating yourself up. Oh my God, I beat myself up. No one told me to do that. I didn't sign up for that. So the more I became aware of what I was saying in here, that I wouldn't say it to my best friend, the more I realized, wow, I'm so hard on myself. That's where my perfectionism comes from, my controlling. I'm a really good person. I'm trying to take care of people I love to the best of my ability. I deserve to feel okay about this.
I totally agree with that. Jay, we're going to take one more break and we'll be right back.
If you
like confessions, we have another podcast we'd love to recommend, the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast with Elizabeth Miller. As a fellow Whole Care Network podcaster, we love how Elizabeth chats it up with family caregivers and dives into their caregiving and self-care strategies. Just like us, Elizabeth believes that family caregivers are the experts in caregiving. Beyond the informative conversations, Elizabeth reveals the tried and true resources and practical self-care tips that empower caregivers to prioritize their health and happiness. You can find the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast wherever you download your favorite podcast or go to the website at happyhealthycaregiver.com.
Hey, everybody, we are back from that break. Let's get going back into this good stuff that we're talking about.
Okay, so I want to let's transition into. Tell me about how caregiving impacted your relationship. We've talked about a little bit about your mom and dad, and we'll get a little bit further back into that. But I want to talk about you and your sister. Like you get the call, because we didn't really kind of go through your story, but you get the call and you immediately do what? You know what I mean?
Well, I said, well, we were all supposedly we were going to be together for the holidays. So we flew our parents down to my sister's house in Florida. And that's when we had to take my dad off the plane. So she threw him to urgent care. He had walking pneumonia. He had some heart issues that were getting worse. So I flew down and kind of assessed the situation, talked to my sister. And I said to my dad, do you need help? And he said, yes. You need help with mommy? Oh, yeah, Soupy, I need help. Oh, okay. Okay, well, you got it. So that's how having no idea what that meant or what that entailed, I just said, yes, let's do it. And right then and there, I just started trying to get his medical records from Florida into New Jersey. That was my first case of how crazy the healthcare system was. And I just said, whatever you need, mom and dad, I'll figure it out. I'll come down on weekend, whatever. So it just sort of naturally progressed. My sister, like I said, I was the eldest, and geographically I was the closest. So I said, babe, I got this. And we're very close. We're really close. And she said, okay, well, I'll do whatever you want me to do. And she was, and just supported me. Like she never once said to me, and that's kind of her personality, but never once said to me, oh, I don't think you should do that. Like that was never. So I was really blessed. I know a lot of people have siblings that give them grief, for whatever reason, whether they're guilty that they're not there, whatever. I was really lucky. So my sister never questioned anything, completely supported me. However, she felt really bad that she wasn't there all the time to this day. Right. And she kept saying, I said, look, there's going to be a day when I'm going to call you and I'm going to ask you to drop everything in your life and fly in and help me. I'm telling you it's going to happen. All right. I said, and you're going to do it. And that's exactly what happened. I had to make a phone call at one point and say, okay, got it. I need you here in 2.5 hours. Bam, she was there and really helped me at end of life. I mean, it was just amazing. But to this day, I know she feels like I did everything and she kind of was in the background. And I have a completely different perception about it. If she hadn't been as supportive and listened to me and took my phone calls, I would have never done it. Because in the back of my mind, I knew she was completely accepting everything I was doing and the support was there. And that was so invaluable. So, with siblings and other family members, there's different roles and they're not always clean cut. I'm taking somebody to the bathroom and showering them. You know what I mean? There's emotional and spiritual help and support that families give. So I was lucky.
She sounds like a great middle sister if there was a baby. She sounds like how awesome I am, Jay. You're welcome for that.
Oh,
I love you.
In my head. Do you see that?
I love you. I know. So, okay. So let me ask you this. Did you move in with your parents? But you did take the lead, and did you start, because your mom, you said she had memory issues. You said that, I believe it was onset of dementia. And so she started having issues. And so when your dad got sick, because they'd been hiding it, sounds like my parents, our parents hide things. What's that about? And you know what it is? We don't want you guys to worry. And you're like, please let me worry. Yeah. Please. Like, no,
were you still working during all this time as well? Yeah. Oh, I like this.
Okay. So
shaking her head.
How much time would you say that you spent providing caregiver duties, not, like, because I've been talking with someone about this. There's this moment that we transition to daughter and caregiver. And at some point it leans more into caregiver than even daughter, right? And it's tasks or it's actions or, you know what I mean? So how much time do you think that you spent doing that? Big guess on average each week.
Yes. And I'm just thinking, because, once you do it, you're doing it 24/7 because it just never goes away. But, it was, I think 50-50 and then maybe 75-25.
Mm-hmm.
It was a balance act for me. So I was doing as much as I possibly could during the day at my full-time job. And then I had long weekends with my parents. So I was basically working. I was basically 24/7. So there was 7 days a week. So I would work all week, jump in the car either Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, go down to my parents, and then go back to work on Monday. So I did that for almost 4.5 years.
Isn't that interesting that because there's studies that people say, and of course, individuals who are caregivers for Alzheimer's and dementia typically average, they say 44 hours a week that they provide caregiving. And my answer is that's cute. Have you ever heard of on-call? On-call means 24/7. And I think that's something that people don't realize is that even if you're not physically there, it is running in the background of your mind. And that's where I think employers and a lot of folks who are wanting to bring awareness and education about the needs of caregivers are trying to explain to businesses like you need caregiver benefits because of presenteeism. Like at any moment, JJ can text me and say, we've got an issue with mom and I'm looking at it. And that doesn't just leave my head. It is sitting in the background of the operating machine thinking, how am I going to support mom? But even more, because JJ takes the lead, how am I going to support JJ? Because I am your sister in that, because JJ is the lead on all things. And then I just say, when do you want to release the Kraken? Because I am the Kraken.
She is the Kraken. And that's so funny when you talk about your sister, which, you know what, we need to get like a Kleenex package that says confessions, because so many times I'm like tearing up with things that you say. But when you talk about your sister and about how she's the support, like I think about it was just the other day when I called Natalie and we say I'm the snot sandwich, because it happens. Like I'll call and she's like, okay, what's wrong? And I'm like, oh, mother of God, you are about to get it. And then it's just this explosion because you expect to be perfect all the time and you can't get emotional. And I cracked because my mom has a broken tooth and they got a referral in December and they dropped the ball. That's what the director of nursing said.
Sorry.
I'm just like, and I cracked. Now it was like, okay, well, we're probably going to need to breathe through this and it's okay, but you do. But that support person is such a key person. And so when I hear you say that, I'm like, that if you're not that person that is the boots on the ground person, to have someone and for them to accept, if you just support the person, that's all we want. It's just somebody to say, you're doing a great job. That doesn't feel like they may feel like it.
That sucks.
They can say,
do you want me to go cut them for you? Because I'll do it. I say ridiculous things like, hey, you want me to go find a rock and throw it on them? How big it is? I'm going to get it right now. My husband does that for me when I get mad. And he'll be like, I'm going to go get a rock. And I'm like, he goes, how big do you want it to be? And I'm like, big. And he goes, big enough to kill them or big enough just to maim them? And I'm like, maim.
Yeah, see, and that's and here's the amazing thing is we need a witness.
Mm-hmm.
See, so much of this I deserve, and then all of this, because we're in, it's like being in a really bad neighborhood alone. We need a witness. It's very simple. Even if you just say, I'm so sorry to me with conviction, you know what I mean? I just need a witness for somebody to say, oh my God, that sucks.
Exactly.
It's validation.
Because there's a part of us that is still saying, I'm failing here.
That's right.
It is.
What is that? And that's where the shame comes.
It's shame and guilt. Let me throw that guilt word in there. I have totally
shame and guilt. Here's a great thing I just heard. Should have already mastered everything. Shame.
Oh my.
I like that. I'm writing that down.
Right?
Should have mastered
already mastered everything.
already.
No.
Gosh, that is
Life
so
is,
good.
you know what I mean? So that's why it's so wonderful when you can get that voice on the phone that gets angry for you.
She does.
I will cut somebody for Jay.
See? So,
Yeah.
and that's validating, that's witnessing that this thing happened that is so horrific and I'm so tired anyway, and that this thing happened that I can't handle. Why? Because it's not handleable. It's, it's not me. It's that the situation really sucks.
Yeah.
And it's just that validation and witness.
Mm.
It's so important.
That is so true. You know, it's we're at that point, Jay.
No,
where I'm like,
stop. I'm like, wait a minute, we need like a session of learning. Like
we're going to church here. Okay, so it's time. I'm going to tell you, it's time for sister questions, and I love sister questions. I feel like Susanne is clearly our sister. And okay, wait, tell me your younger sister's name.
Michelle.
Okay, Michelle is also our sister.
True.
I feel like Michelle should have been on here, but that's okay. We'll have another session with Michelle. I know Suzanne's like, let's have a sister session. We love sister sessions. Okay. So Jay,
yes.
What's your sister question?
Okay. So first of all, I have to say that Susanne has a book out. I'm going to get it actually right now.
Oh, are you going to get it?
Is a practical guide to caring for you while you care for your loved one. It said guide. So I'm hoping it has like coloring opportunities, and it is connect the dots, Susanne, because I need that. But here's my question. It's not a funny question, Allie. It actually is.
No.
So I'm sorry.
Okay.
So care never ends, but you are in the aftercare place.
Ooh, good question.
So you're there where you're like, okay, it has physically somewhat ended. So now you're in that physical portion where, hey, I got to take care of myself. There are a lot of people that we talk to that have gotten there and don't know how to move on. One thing that you would share with someone that is at that place where they are after care, what would you say to them? What's the best advice you could give with them when they're trying to move on?
Give yourself time to heal. Patience with the aftermath healing process. It's grief. It's grief at its ultimate work. And so many people will say, well, it's over, right? So you're back to your life now, right? No.
Yeah.
No, my life is there, and to try to go back to an old normal baseline isn't working. There's no time limit. Take the time you need to heal, period.
I think it also, whether the person passes or the person doesn't, I think that you will experience grief. I think you're exactly right. I remember when our dad died, our mom just grieved. And then all of a sudden it felt like it was gone, but then she would have bouts of grief. And so I think that's the thing that's normal to have intermittent, like I'm going to have good days. I'm going to have bad days. So here's a different question. I'm going to ask you, I'll have another sister question, but I want a follow-up question. So somebody said we can't go back to normal the way it was before. Like once you've gone through this, you can't go back, and time doesn't even allow us to. The question is would you, Susanne, want to go back to the way it was before you started caregiving?
Absolutely not. No. I'm a better me.
I love that. I'm a better me.
Wow.
I think it's what do I need to work on? Because I saw that for myself, Susanne. I saw myself in all of the things. You and I are so much alike. And I always talk about that Jason's cancer healed me, because it really helped me reprioritize. It helped me see myself. It's so easy to slip back into old habits. I'm going to tell you right now, there are days that I work way too long and don't spend enough time with Jason. But I hope that I am learning and continuing to grow from it, because I think care will come again. We'll be called to action again. And whether it's a couple hours, it's full time, I think at some point, we're always going to be called to action. And I think we're better prepared for it. Would you agree?
I would agree completely. And I think that that's the power of example I can give, because everyone's situation is different. But, all the therapy, I'm sober 38 years, all the recovery, all this stuff, nothing got me in touch with who I was and helped to heal me, because I'm still working on it. I'm a work in progress, as taking care of my parents. I mean, it was like recovery and understanding and self-awareness on steroids.
Well, and selflessness.
Yeah. I mean, it was the greatest gift I could ever have. I mean, I literally healed a lifetime of misery with my mom. Like, when she passed, I stood at her gravesite and I was like, we're good. Think about that. Hence.
Well, and I'll tell you this, I hope that folks have that opportunity. I think that, I know we've talked to some folks that it didn't give you that opportunity to necessarily heal with that individual. But I think what it does is it allows you to heal and forgive yourself. And I think that's where that's the real purpose of everything is, can I heal myself? I have one last question, because then we have to move along, but we'll have you back. What is your favorite guilty pleasure? What is the thing that you do just for you, that you would do it, like just for you?
I haven't done it in a long time, so I'm thinking about doing it again. Horses.
Really?
I mean,
I had a horse.
them, riding them, owning them.
Riding them, not so much now. I don't know if I would ride them anymore, because it's really dangerous. But I had a horse that I rode every Sunday. I took an hour out of my Sunday when I was taking care of my parents, and I found a barn and a horse. And friends, one of my best friends now was from that experience. And I would ride this horse. We'd walk around with these ladies, and I ended up calling them caregiver cowgirls, because every single one of them ended up being caregivers. Yeah, it was like weird.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, and Scooby, he was amazing. And when my dad passed, I went to go get him out of the pasture, and he just laid, and he was really big, and he just laid head on me. And I was like, what are you doing?
He knew.
Like for like a minute and a half. And I was like, okay, picked his head up and said, okay, let's go. He knew. So, for me and I did that for myself as a caregiver. So I still have that, the smell of horse poop.
People can't see you going, I love it. I will say this, our friends at Healing Strides would say there's a reason that therapeutic riding is so appropriate. And it's funny because you're not actually riding. You're not actually a therapeutic riding from a clinical standpoint. You actually are standing, you're with, and that horse can absolutely sense. So, okay, I'm going to leave us there. But guys, Susanne, thank you so much for blessing us today with so many wisdom. Like, we've got like 400 videos we could do on words of wisdom that you could give. And we love your sister, Michelle. We love you, your sister. And guys, until we confess again, thanks so much for being with us.
Bye-bye.
Well, friends, that's a wrap on this week's confession. Again, thank you so much for listening. But before you go, please take a moment to leave us a review and tell your friends about the Confessions podcast. Don't forget to visit our website to sign up for our newsletter. You'll also find the video recording of all of our episodes on the Confessions website and our YouTube channel. Don't worry, all the details are included in the show notes below. We'll see you next Tuesday when we come together to confess again. Till then, take care of you. Okay, let's talk disclaimers. You may be surprised to find out, but we are not medical professionals and are not providing any medical advice. If you have any medical questions, we recommend that you talk with a medical professional of your choice. As always, my sisters and I at Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver have taken care in selecting the speakers, but the opinions of our speakers are theirs alone. The views and opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted, and no part can be reproduced without the express written consent of the Sisterhood of Care, LLC. Thank you for listening to the Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver podcast.